Good morning, everybody. It's Mad Early. Drive Time Shaman videos. Castaldo here. Driving to the cemetery. So I'm gonna wait for some people to join. I hope everybody's Thanksgiving was all right. It's about sunrise. Morning after Thanksgiving. The sky is amazing right now. And I want to do another video in a little while about Maria Taigi, who was a mystic. And all of us mystics and seers, whether you come from a hereditary family or not, we have all capability of tapping into the same collective consciousness, the same spirit worlds. So technically, any mystic from any place, any time, any dimension can tap into each other. And, you know, after growing up and doing some research from some of the spirit experiences that I've had, I had some mind-blowing revelations when I saw the pictures of certain people that I realized were visiting me astrally, or visiting me in dream time, or visiting me during time jumps. What do I mean by time jumps? It's basically like an astral travel. There were certain times in my life where I was so tired, I was going out of body. Especially when I was younger as a kid, after my near-death experience, there was a period of time where, until I actually gave into it, when I would be really exhausted, I would feel like my body was gonna die. Like everything started going wah, and slowing down, and it felt like if I didn't shake my head, I would get stuck like that for the rest of my life or die. And you try to scream for your mom or scream for help, and you can't even get the noise out of your throat. And you try to, if you have enough strength, you could try to shake yourself out of it. But when I learned that it's not gonna kill me, that I can just get the air around you, you can experience it like you're literally there at that place in time. So that to me is like a time jump. And I had various experiences with certain mystics that I thought were just figments of my imagination, or just people that you see in dreams as a child. And two of them that are now seemingly famous, you know, in even in pop culture. And people don't realize the black magic that they were involved in, and that's Ron Hubbard. What's very interesting is that I told books of my poems, my songs that I write, and my dream journals, and since I'm a real little kid. And even though there's times where I've lost a lot of things, I've always kept my notebooks. And I've always either kept them at my mom's, which is my dad's house. Now my mom's gone, but I've always kept them at my mom and dad's house, or, you know, somehow I've always managed to hang on to most of my notebooks. And there's a notebook that I found at my dad's house the other day from 1992, which was when I was in high school. You know, I was like in 10th grade, I think, at the time. And I wrote this song that I'm passing Ledgeworth right now, actually. I wrote this song called A Beautiful Disaster. And the lyrics to one of the main hooks of the song is, "You're such a strange angel. You're such a strange angel." It talks about how, you know, somebody's like doing damage to themselves, tearing themselves apart, but they're really an amazing creature, amazing person, but they've tore themselves apart in many ways. And some of the lyrics are, what a pretty disaster. You're such a strange angel pulling off your wings. And usually when I write lyrics, I do a little doodle with it, like some sort of, while I'm writing them, I do a little sketches to go along with the song, the lyrics I'm writing. It takes me to the place, it takes me into the song, and I usually do sketches. So this song, where I'm talking about a strange angel pulling off his wings, or her wings, or whoever, I did a little sketch of a person I have it in my notebook. I can't get to it right now, but I will show you guys later. I will have it on my Patreon as well. But hold on. So I can't really look what I'm doing right now. I don't want to take my eyes off the road because I'm not risking something happening just because I was with my phone. So, but I got to get a mount for this shit. So this in 1992, I was aware of the name L. Ron Hubbard, and I had an interesting revelation when I first saw the picture of him. In fact, when I was growing up, there was a lot of commercials for a book called Dianetics, and L. Ron Hubbard's, which turned into Scientology and everything like this. But I was getting a vision of somebody coming to me in my dreams, and he was basically, it was L. Ron Hubbard. I didn't know it at the time, but when I saw a picture of L. Ron Hubbard, I was like, oh my God, that's the heavy-set man that I saw in my dreams. He wasn't fat, but he was a little chubby-faced, balding, and there was a few times I had a vision of him come to me in my dreams. And one time he was holding out his hand for me to grab, and it was glowing red. And in my dream, I felt like I was getting pulled towards his hand, but I felt it felt evil to me, and I was trying to run away from him, but I kept feeling like I was getting drawn into it, right? And I eventually woke up sweating and really upset about it. And then a few nights later, I had a dream of the same man laying on his deathbed with everybody standing around him. And he was screaming at his friends or his family or whoever was around him, "If I die, you have to burn me! Burn me immediately! Burn me!" Like screaming with the veins popping out, and his face was so red. And he was screaming to everybody that if he passes away, that you better burn him as soon as possible. Burn his corpse. And it really frightened me as a kid. And then in the early 90s, right around, I don't know exactly the same time, but in the early 90s was the first time I saw a picture of L. Ron Hubbard, and it was this guy. And it sent chills throughout my whole body. It was right around the same time that I wrote the song Pretty Disaster, or Beautiful Disaster, or whatever it was, with the strange angel and the person with missing one arm. And this is the sketch that I drew. The person was missing one arm, they had wings, but they were missing one wing, and one arm was like a stump, and then half of the face was missing. One eyeball was missing, and the other face had like a weird smile where you could see the teeth coming out, almost like half face or two face in Batman. And at the time, it was just something that was coming to me while I was writing this song. And I wasn't really aware of Jack Parsons at that time. I didn't find out about him until a few years later, and I didn't do research on him till probably a decade later. But that picture that I drew, to me, is 100% Jack Parsons. Jack Parsons and L. Ron Hubbard were doing the whole time. Jack Parsons was involved with making the Moonchild, a rise of a new breed, a goddess, a demonic goddess almost. And this spiritual technology, this black magic, comes from the fallen angels, comes from the Watchers, comes from the holographic universe, the dark side. And it's basically magic or technology, spiritual technology of the giants, of the red-headed giants. King Og and Queen Lithla was one of the original black magic spells of the Moonchild. This is why Marjorie Cameron was the perfect candidate with her red hair and green eyes. This is a trait of the Rephaim. And people don't really understand where the Moonchild sorcery comes from. It comes from the Watchers, the Grigori. It comes from the giants. And it literally comes from Samael or Semyaza or Azazel, however you want to pronounce it, or even Pan could be the same being. Even Anki, all pretty much the same set, all pretty much the same people, just different cultures, right? And when I first saw the picture of L. Ron Hubbard, I knew it was the guy coming to me in my dreams, and apparently Jack Parsons was coming to me in my psychic visions as well. And when Jack Parsons died, the early 1950s, he was working with hazardous chemicals. He was a rocket scientist, even though I don't think he ever literally went to college. I don't even know if he graduated high school, but he was highly intelligent. And he was working with chemicals, and, you know, his death was a direct result of black magic. It was the fallout. Even though he wasn't probably even, who knows if he was actually doing black magic at his moment of death, it's the fallout, it's the repercussions of his black magic that led to his death. The unseen forces around him caused what happened that day. It's my understanding that happened. And black magic can lead to a domino effect of evil. Hey Jess, how's it been? Long time is right. And so Jack Parsons was working in his lab or with chemicals. He was a chemist as well. He was working with hazardous chemicals, and he dropped the can that he was mixing them in. And I guess while he dropped it, he realized it's a big deal, and he went to go reach down to catch it before it hit the ground. And it hit the ground and it exploded. They felt like an earthquake or some sort of bomb was dropped throughout California. So that area of Los Angeles, Pasadena, that area where he's from. I think it's Pasadena. And his arm was blown off. Half of his face was blown off. And it led to a chain reaction of events that was just horrific. His mother ended up committing suicide that same day, overdosing on pills, while an invalid friend watched her who couldn't walk, literally had to watch her die. She committed suicide because of Jack's death a few hours before. And Jack was blown apart. His arm was missing. He ended up being pronounced dead at the hospital. He couldn't even talk. He was trying to gurgle out something and tell people, but he died a horrible death, a painful death. And I was drawing sketches in 1992. Susan, love you too. Susan, I'm so glad we were able to do the reading. We tapped in deep, and so much more is being revealed. And thank you so much for all your support, Susan, that you have sent and everything else. Thank you so much. You're a savior. Everybody out there who supports me is definitely an amazing person, and good will come to you when you do good to good souls. So I was drawing sketches of Jack Parsons without even knowing these events that took place in 1992 when I was younger, in high school. And at the same time, I was getting astral visits from L. Ron Hubbard. And I think that certain mystics, certain people that have magic in their blood, they are visited and watched upon and almost sometimes attacked through the life energy and the imprint of that magic that other people left on our plane. And I can't describe it completely, but I've had forces like that have astral visits, and mystics have somehow communicated with me in many different ways throughout my life. And if you guys open yourselves up, most likely if you start to look around all the spiritual signs that's around you and you start paying attention to them, they're talking to you as well, and they're around you as well. It's just a matter of finding these spiritual signs and understanding why you're being exposed to this and why it's there. It doesn't, some of them could be good, some of them could be bad, but it's up to you to understand these spiritual signs. And it's very interesting, because once I saw Ron Hubbard actual face and I knew that was the man from my dreams, I had an intense meditation one day about him, and I saw him with, I don't know if this was an astral version of him or something, some kind of magic that he did in the past, but I saw him as a hybrid dragon. Literally, I saw him have feathers coming around his head, and he had these antennae that were coming out of his above brow. Long antennae with balls at the end, like these big bulb, like he had a big ridge here, like his upper head had a ridge right here, and he had these two antennas coming out, like antennae, and they were like balls at the top, and they were like dragon's antenna, you know, and you know, they looked scaly, and they were like reddish and purple and everything. So like he was like part dragon. So it's really intense when you have visions of somebody, and then you think it's just a dream, or it's just some random person in your dream or your vision, and then you come to find out later on it's an actual person from the past, from the eternal now. Not even just from the past. It's a real person who was really into some high level spiritual stuff. It's really intense. And when I started reading, I have a book now titled Strange Angel about Jack Parsons. I don't know if I have it here right now, but I do have a book here with me. So starting in about 10 years ago, I started doing some research on Jack Parsons and Ron Hubbard. Really intense. And there's many books. This was a book I got a couple of years ago about the life of Marjorie Cameron. It's called Wormwood Star. This is a pretty good book if you guys want to check it out. And there's a book titled Strange Angel by about Jack Parsons' life, which I've read. And they have a TV show, I think, on Netflix or somewhere called Strange Angel right now. But I'm not sure if it's like real life. I haven't seen it or anything like that. But while I was reading about Jack Parsons, I read that certain books that he was enchanted by, certain books that he just loved throughout his life, are same certain books that I loved growing up. You know, one of them is The Golden Bow by James Frazier, and The Golden Bow by James Frazier is a very intense book. It talks about like the origins of religion and rituals and shamanistic communities and all sorts of ancient sacrifice rituals and all sorts of things that tribes and all sorts of cultures did for thousands of years. And the reason why I was first brought up with this book from the 1800s, and it sort of like was one of my favorite books growing up, especially in high school. I really tore that book apart, was because of my ancestors. And the book starts with describing Lake Nemi, where my family is from, and the mystical sacred grove around Lake Nemi and the Alban Hills there in Italy. And that's the only book in the world that talks about Lake Nemi like that. So that was just something I was drawn to right away. And when I found out Jack Parsons that was one of his favorite books growing up, I had a vision of Jack Parsons laying on the floor on his stomach, reading the book. You know, you never see like a little kid if a little kid's reading or coloring in a book on the floor, or he's laying belly down and his like feet are dangling behind him sort of, and they're just like engulfed in the book. I saw Jack Parsons, even as an adult, laying on the floor like he was a little kid engulfed in his coloring book, or engulfed in his book, reading this book like a child would read something, where you're just totally in it. And I think that he took it to another level with some of that book, and he wanted to do some of those rituals and some of the ancient magic of the dark forces that were on our planet. He wanted power, he wanted interdimensional travel, and he knew that the way to do this is to merge technology with spirituality. And he knew that a lot of the science fiction that was going about, and the newfound quantum physics, was right in line with the sorcery. And he made that connection, and he knew that, just like other mystics had knew that before. But now, with the invention of quantum physics, now it's starting to accelerate to the point where people are actually able to merge worlds together through this technology. And we see this has happened before on our planet. I mean, this is where tales of sea goddesses come from, like Venus, where they are merging from the sea, from the waters above, meeting the waters below, and then something emerges, most likely in some sort of egg or pod. It's a connection between realms. It's an interdimensional travel, and connecting for the stars, which is the above waters, to our below waters here. And all sorts of mystics throughout time have had mysterious visions through either the moon or the sun, and technology with spheres, or glowing balls of light. And I've been getting spiritual signs. There's times where this is how usually it works with me. I'll get an intense vision, I'll get an intense dream, even in the waking state, I'll get something intense that comes to me. And then right after it, I'll get led to a book, or I'll get led to look something up, or I'll hear something on the radio, and it like gives me a revelation. Or all of a sudden I just start writing out of nowhere, and I have a knowing that comes over me. And this happens every day with me with something, and it's happened with me with Maria Taigi. And I'm going to do another video about this later on. But Maria Taigi, she basically was a mystic, a seer, and she had remarkable capabilities. Now, you get these psychic abilities, they're already dormant within everyone. So some people are born with them activated. Some people lose them over time. Some people are born and have them activated later on in life through a near-death experience, or through a spiritual awakening, or through some sort of trauma that puts you through spiritual turmoil, that makes you have a spiritual experience, and then it activates them. Some people never activate them, right? There's all sorts of ways your psychic abilities can be open, but once you crack that doorway open on your head, and you actually even hear the pop, there's sometimes no going back. You just open up to those spiritual forces around you. And Maria Taigi, from the research I did on her and the information that was coming to me about it, truly mind-blowing. She was from, I don't even have the book on me about her right now, but she was from like the 1700s to the early 1800s. She was, I forget the area of Italy which she was from, but she was married. She got married around the age of 21, and she got married to a man that she loved dearly, but he was quarrelsome. He was abusive verbally, pushed her around a lot. He was just a hard man to live with, and she had to deal with a lot. And she didn't believe in divorce. She didn't believe in leaving her. And around 21 years old, she married him. They had kids. She raised the kids. She was basically by herself, because this guy was always, angry. He was just a hard husband to have around. And she stuck it out with him for until she died. And then after her death, he was talking how much of a saint she was. Now, of course, after she dies, right? But what's very interesting, and what came to me about it was, to me, it is 100% accurate, at least. Maybe I don't have all the things correct, but how her psychic abilities was activated, to me, is 100% correct. So, through the trauma of her marriage, through the spiritual turmoil she was going in, having to raise the kids and dealing with this horrible husband, all of this, it activated a spiritual awakening. She was so close before all the high spiritual energy that she generated, whether it's good or bad. You generate this high spiritual energy. It brings the spiritual worlds. It brings the other world. It brings the higher dimensional world closer to you. Your higher self is speaking to you like, holy shit, you need to figure some shit out. And you know, we need to help you. Your higher self is screaming to you. So it brings the other worlds closer to you because of the panic that's taking place on this world. Either through extreme ecstasy or extreme pain, you can activate these forces. Your higher dimensional self can activate and communicate with you. And once you get exposed to the spiritual realms, you can get contacted by all sorts of things. You're just like on the radar now. So, not long after her getting married, this psychic abilities manifested within her. That's not a coincidence. That is because of the direct result of her trauma she was going through and the spiritual turmoil her husband was generating, and having to take care of the kids and the worry and everything else. She was doing a lot for the community and the church and everything, right? She was a really good woman and mother and wife. And so, you know, a few months after her marriage started, probably her husband, when they first met, was the most saintly guy to her, treated her great, did all this. And then once you get married and you're living in the house with him, things change. And you start to emotion activates. Exactly. You start to notice, once you start to notice who somebody really is, and you're living with them and they start to really show them their colors and their cards, you know, it probably was so much for her to take in, and she's never been treated like that in her life before. And then all of a sudden, the man that she loves is now this monster. And, you know, it generated this force in her. You know, you can't find that in the record books. You can't find that in the history books. All they say is, right after she got married, these abilities started to come in. And how did these abilities came in? Right around the time she was 21 years old, and she got married at 21, which was, I think, around 1790 or 1791, somewhere like that. If you're looking for more information and pictures of Anna Maria Taigi, which I'm going to do another post about her today. I did an amazing post about her on my Patreon last night, patreon.com/themysticalspiral. I went deeper into this, because they even have her corpse now in a plastic molding because it eventually withered away, but it stayed in an incorrupt state for a long period of time after she died. And they have her still in a glass reliquary at a church, and they worship her. You know, any seer or mystic, they hold the bodies, and they use it as a key to the other realms. They use it for prophecy still. But so there's a lot to go into about her, and I'm going to do a whole nother video about her. But when she was around 21 years old, a few months after she first got married, she had an amazing experience. What happened? She saw what she described as a mysterious sun, a miniature sun, and it appeared to her right before her in a constant position, like holding firm its place right before her, right above her head. Like a miniature sun that was made just for her. A glowing, luminous sphere. And inside this sphere, she saw a majestic woman, and looking with her eyes up to the sky. And above the rays of this miniature sun, the glowing rays of the sun, she saw a crown of thorns. And it had all these little thorns, and then these big thorns that came down and came to like this way. And underneath it, like, came around. I have pictures of it because they have illustrations of it. And it was like spikes or thorns that came around the sun, and it closed in at the bottom, and like it's like a big loop. And she, from this luminous sphere, This stayed with her for 47 years. From the time she was married, or roughly around the time she got married, into her death 47 years later. She was married for 47 years. So from 21 years old, 47 years past that, she had these visions. And within this glowing sphere, and within this miniature sun that she saw, she would be able to prophesize future events, present events. She would be able to know the secret thoughts in people's minds, no matter where they were on the world. It was almost like a crystal ball that would give her prophetic visions. She would even know what people were thinking, no matter if they were close to her or far away. She would know the fate of people that died, the fate of the departed, as they put it. She was able to prophesize things off the charts. Off the charts. She even prophesied the day she was going to die. And like I said, this stayed with her for 47 years, this mysterious sun, right? And so when she died, of course, the Catholics took her body, and they're using it. They used it for, I think they used it for many, many years to prophesize, to use it as a key to the other world. And then when they were done with it, or they misused it, or they started adding plastic or wax to it, this is when it started to rot. You know, but when it was left in its original state, it stayed incorruptible. And this is sort of like a sorcery vampire. If somebody is using a corpse, if they mark the corpse at death or before death in a certain sorcery way, it can stay and retain the freshness of life, like it just died, as long as it's being used in its rituals. So this is why certain things stay incorruptible. It's almost like it's marked for a vampire with a vampiric sort of energy. Spiritual vampire, where it's sucking the life of other things out there to maintain its own freshness. It's taking the life force of others so it can retain its own freshness still. And you know, it's once they start adding things to preserve it and doing all this, then things start to break down. But there's a reason why the mummy is mummified and it's preserved like this. It's so it retains the freshness of life, and it can reemerge, reborn eternally within another body, or come to life again another day, another time. And that's a whole nother show. But she had this for 47 years, that she would see this glowing sphere and be able to prophesize through it. And this is something that we really need to re-examine. And now with this coming technologies and certain things that we've seen on our planet, certain things that people have witnessed, now they see that this stuff is not just not this imagery, poetic imagery. This is real life technology happening. This is spiritual technology. One of the things that she prophesized that is very similar to a vision I had was about 3 days of darkness that would fall upon us. Almost like an eclipse happens, but it lasts a few days. And people couldn't leave their houses because they would breathe in some sort of virus. Even if they looked out the window, they would get this sickness. They would have to stay indoors. Now, I had a recent vision while researching Maria Taigi that was very similar to this. But I saw people in the near future, the not too distant future, inside their home, staying in some sort of pods. And they were, if they would leave this pod and go outside, or even open the window to their house, you know, they would have to stay in a sealed environment. If they would open the window even, they would breathe in some sort of sacred fire, some sort of, you know, something that's literally in the wind, carrying within the wind, a global sickness that is upon us. And I think it's the same thing. This has happened. This has happened in many different ways on our planet. I think that this is how, when people are born as well, they breathe in the amnesia of this realm, and they don't remember anything. You know, they don't even remember how to nothing. You know, you have to be taught everything as a kid. And it's not like that with other animals. Animals, right away, they know how to walk, they know how to do this, they know how to do that as soon as they come out. But somehow humans are breathing in the amnesia when we come out of the womb. And I think it's there's going to be something else that comes into our planet, possibly from an asteroid or something where when it touches down into our realm, it opens up, like hatches like an egg or a pod, and out comes this unseen virus that people are breathing in. And you know, it's I hate to try to be all doom and gloom, but it's not all doom and gloom. It's just reality is reality. Certain things that are out there that we can't ignore. And like I've said before, if there's negativity on our planet, and it's magnifying, then guess what? It's a polarization on our planet. We live in a realm of duality. We can bring just as much positivity as there is negativity, and even more. It's just up to us not to look for the easy way out always, not to look for a substitute for our own abilities. And yeah, a harmonic resonance shift. That's a good way of putting it, Costi. And I hope everybody had a great holiday. Thank you for joining me. You could support me right here in the super chat or on my PayPal at themysticalspiral.com. I'm going to be changing my website. I haven't had a chance to do it lately because of my computer connection. But hopefully I'll be able to do it today or tomorrow. I'm changing the prices, and I'm offering other things. I'm changing my readings, the way they're listed on there. And I'm also going to be doing email readings available for people as well. And spiritual clearings. I also do renewing of vows for people, where we bind your hand to the old ways, and it's a spiritual union, a twin flame spiritual union, a soul union. Most people just get married and it's just a physical sort of thing, all this money, this and that, but they're not doing a merge of souls, a union between your spiritual energy and your spirit and your emotional connection. And this is part of what I do as well. So not only do I pull evil out of people, I put joy into people as well. And so if you need your vows renewed, we can even do this over Skype if we can't do it in person. Vows renewed. I do spiritual clearings, spiritual readings, timeline readings. I have world-class crystals, custom-made copper tensor tools that can cut down evil vibes. I have all sorts of things, even t-shirts available, spiral out t-shirts available. So please contact me, guys. If you're looking for anything for the holidays, I'll give you guys an amazing deal. That's all at themysticalspiral.com. And thank you guys for joining me, and we'll see you soon. Spiral out.